The heat wakes me before my eyes do. Something heavy is pressed against my chest, warm as a furnace, and for one panicked second, I think the pod is burning. My hand shoots up to shove it away, and that is when I feel scales. I freeze. My heart slams against my ribs so hard I can hear it in my own ears. Slowly, carefully, I lift my head and look down, half expecting to see a wound, a fire, anything that makes sense after a crash landing on an uncharted moon. Instead, I see a baby dragon curled up on my chest, sleeping like she has lived there her whole life. She is small, maybe the size of a large dog, with soft blue-gray scales that catch the weak morning light coming through the cracked windshield of my pod. Her wings are folded against her back, thin and delicate, still growing into whatever massive shape they are meant to become. Little curls of smoke drift lazily from her nostrils with every breath. She does not stir when I move. She just tightens her claws slightly against my flight suit, like she is afraid I might slip away in the night. My name is Cale Dorn, and 3 days ago, I was a salvage engineer with a simple job. Fly out to the edge of the Varan system, scan an abandoned mining moon for parts, load up, fly home, get paid. That was the whole plan. Nobody warned me about dragons. I lie there for a long moment, not daring to breathe too loudly, running through every survival protocol I have ever learned. None of them cover this. There is no manual for waking up with an apex predator's baby asleep on your chest like you are her personal mattress. Outside the cracked window, the sky is the color of rust, streaked with thin clouds. My pod is half buried in loose gray soil, one wing sheared clean off during the crash, the nose crumpled against a boulder the size of a house. I remember the storm that pulled me down, the way the controls screamed and then went dead, the impact that threw me against the harness hard enough to black out. I do not remember a baby dragon climbing in through the broken hatch and deciding I looked comfortable. She shifts again, a soft rumbling sound coming from somewhere deep in her chest, almost like a cat's purr but lower, rougher. Whatever she is dreaming about, it seems peaceful. I am the opposite of peaceful. My mind is racing through one terrifying question. If there is a baby, there is almost always a mother. And mothers of large predatory species do not usually take kindly to strangers holding their young. I ease my head back slowly and turn it toward the shattered window, scanning the tree line beyond the crash site. Nothing moves. No shape blocks out the weak sun. No shadow falls across the soil. Just silence, thick and unnatural. The kind of silence that makes the hair on your arms stand up because it feels wrong, like the whole moon is holding its breath. I try to sit up an inch, testing whether the baby dragon will wake. She does. Her eyes open, and they are a bright, molten gold, far too intelligent for something so small. She looks at me the way you might look at a chair you already own. No fear, no surprise. Just simple, complete ownership. Then she yawns, showing a mouth full of tiny sharp teeth, stretches her wings out for a second, and curls right back down onto my chest, like nothing at all is wrong with this situation. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. Okay, not hostile. Not yet, anyway. I spend the next several minutes doing what any engineer would do when faced with the impossible. I catalog. Small size, wings not yet functional for real flight, scales still soft near the underbelly, meaning she is young, probably only weeks old. No visible injuries on her. That last part worries me more than anything else. If she is unhurt, healthy, and alone, something separated her from her mother very suddenly. I finally manage to sit up fully, cradling her against my chest with one arm, because she refuses to be set down, gripping my suit with small clawed hands like tiny fists. With my free hand, I reach for the emergency kit wedged under my seat and pull out my scanner, running a quick sweep of the surrounding terrain. The readout makes my stomach drop. Less than a kilometer from my position, the scanner picks up scorched earth, a wide circle of blackened ground, trees snapped and flattened in a spiral pattern that only comes from something enormous thrashing in a fight. There are no bodies, no obvious remains. Just destruction, wide and violent, and then silence. Something big fought here, something big lost, or fled, or worse. And this baby, this tiny dragon currently drooling slightly onto my collar, walked away from whatever happened, and found her way to the first warm thing in the wreckage. Me. I have flown cargo through pirate lanes. I have repaired reactor cores with my hands shaking from radiation exposure. I have talked my way out of 3 different border disputes, using nothing but stubbornness and bad jokes. But nothing in my life has prepared me for the responsibility currently gripping my flight suit with the strength of a bear trap. I could leave her here. Some part of my brain, the practical, mission-focused part, points that out clearly. My pod is wrecked, my comms are down, and I have maybe 6 days of rations if I stretch them. Every extra mouth is a risk. Every hour spent caring for a baby dragon is an hour not spent fixing my ship or signaling for rescue. I look down at her golden eyes, half closed again, already drifting back to sleep against my chest, trusting me completely, without a single reason to. There was never really a choice. I name her Ember before I even decide to keep her, because the little curls of smoke drifting from her nose remind me of a dying campfire, warm and stubborn and refusing to go out. She does not object to the name. She does not seem to care what I call her, as long as I stay within arm's reach. The next few hours become a strange kind of routine. I pry open the crumpled storage compartment and find most of my gear intact: thermal blankets, a portable heater, and enough field rations to keep one grown human alive for a week. I have no idea what baby dragons eat, so I offer her a strip of protein ration first, holding it out carefully, ready to pull my hand back. She sniffs it, wrinkles her nose like I have personally insulted her, and instead climbs into my lap and starts chewing on the strap of my tool bag. Great. My supplies are apparently less interesting than my belongings. I spend the better part of the morning trying to get my comms array working again, dragging the busted panel out into the open and laying out my tools in careful rows, the way I always do. A habit that keeps my mind steady when everything else is falling apart. Ember follows every movement of my hands with sharp interest, occasionally reaching out to bat at a screwdriver or a length of wire, her small claws surprisingly gentle when she is not trying to steal something. At one point, she manages to grab a coil of copper wire and drag it 15 feet away before curling around it protectively, like she has just claimed the greatest treasure in the galaxy. I decide not to fight her for it. There is plenty more wire. By mid-afternoon, the array is still dead, the main transmitter cracked beyond field repair, but I manage to coax a weak distress beacon signal out of the backup unit. It will not reach far, maybe 100 kilometers on a clear day, but it is something. I set it to loop automatically and turn my attention to more immediate problems, like the fact that the sun is starting to dip and the temperature is dropping fast. Ember notices the cold before I do. She presses herself against my side as I work, her body radiating a surprising amount of heat for something so small, and I realize with a strange jolt that she is not just seeking comfort, she is keeping me warm, the same way I am trying to keep her fed and safe. It is not a one-way arrangement. It never really was. That night, wrapped in a thermal blanket with a baby dragon tucked against my ribs, like the world's strangest hot water bottle, I finally let myself think about the scorched clearing not far from here. Whatever happened there is not finished. I can feel it. The same instinct that has kept me alive through a dozen dangerous salvage jobs. The quiet certainty that something out there is still hunting. I do not sleep well. Morning comes gray and cold, and I wake to find Ember already awake, sitting upright on my chest, staring intently toward the tree line with her small nostrils flaring. Smoke curls from her nose in short, sharp bursts, faster than before. Whatever calm she had yesterday is gone. I sit up slowly, easing her down into my lap, and reach for my scanner. The readout confirms what my gut already suspected. Something large is moving through the trees, roughly 400 meters out and closing, moving in a slow, deliberate arc around the crash site, the pattern of something that is stalking rather than simply traveling. My mind runs through options fast. I have a flare gun, a multi-tool that can cut through most soft metals, and a busted pod with no working weapon systems. Against whatever tore apart that clearing yesterday, none of it feels like enough. Ember presses herself flat against my chest, small body trembling, and for the first time since I found her, she looks genuinely afraid. Not of me, of whatever is out there in the trees. I make a decision fast, The kind of decision you make when there is no time to second-guess it. I gather what I can carry, the flare gun, my multi-tool, the last working ration packs, and I move Ember and myself into the sturdiest part of the wreck, the reinforced cargo section near the rear of the pod, the one part of the ship that survived the crash without buckling. I seal the hatch as best I can with a length of cable and wait, my back against the cold metal wall, Ember curled tight against my side, both of us watching the narrow gap where the door does not quite close all the way. The sound comes first, a low, dragging rhythm, heavy footsteps that shake loose dust from the ceiling with each impact, growing closer with unhurried confidence, like whatever it is already knows exactly where we are and feels no need to rush. Ember's smoke turns sharp and hot, and a small, high sound builds in her throat, not quite a growl, not quite a cry. I press my hand flat against her back, trying to steady her, trying to steady myself. Through the gap in the hatch, I finally see it. A shape moving between the trees, low and long, built more like a hunting cat than anything reptilian, with dark, mottled fur, and eyes that catch what little light there is, and throw it back in a flat, hungry glow. It is not the mother, it is not even the same species. It is something else entirely, something that circled back for what it started the day before. It stops at the edge of the clearing, and lifts its head, testing the air, and I realize with a cold, sinking feeling that it can smell Ember's smoke drifting through the gap in the hatch. I have maybe seconds to decide what happens next. I grab the flare gun, my hands steadier than I expect them to be, and I think through the layout of my wrecked pod one more time, the way I have thought through 100 broken systems before, looking for the one weak point that changes everything. The heater. The portable unit sitting just outside the cargo hatch, still running on its own reserve battery, pumping heat into the open air, where I left it to keep Ember warm through the night. If I can draw the creature toward it, toward the heat and the scent, instead of toward us, I might buy enough time for the beacon to reach someone, anyone. I ease the hatch open just far enough to slide my arm through, and I fire the flare, not at the creature, but past it, arcing high and bright into the open ground beyond the heater. A sudden burst of light and noise designed to confuse rather than harm. The creature flinches back, head snapping toward the flash, and in that same instant, I hurl the loose panel of scrap metal beside me, as hard as I can toward the heater unit, knocking it over with a crash of sparks and hissing static. The combination of sound, light, and sudden heat surge sends the creature stumbling sideways, confused, its attention split 3 different directions at once. It is not much. It will not last long, but it is enough. Ember, trembling against my side, suddenly lets out a sound I have not heard from her before, sharp and piercing, far louder than something her size should be able to produce, a cry that seems to vibrate straight through the hull of the pod. I do not know if it is fear or fury, but the creature outside recoils from the sound like it has been struck, ears flattening, body coiling backward in obvious pain. I do not waste the opening. I slam the hatch fully shut, wedge the cable tight, and pull Ember against my chest, both of us breathing hard in the sudden darkness of the sealed cargo hold. Outside, I hear the creature retreat, footsteps fading unevenly into the trees, driven back by noise and light, and a sound clearly meant to warn off things far larger than a lone human with a flare gun. For a long time, neither of us moves. I hold Ember close, feeling her small heart hammering against my palm, slowly, gradually, beginning to steady. My own pulse takes longer to calm down. When I finally trust myself to speak, my voice comes out rough. I tell her she did good. I do not know if she understands the words, but she presses her head against my chin anyway, and the sound rumbling in her chest this time is unmistakably content. We stay sealed in the cargo hold through the rest of that day and into the night, taking turns, if you can call it that, staying alert. I do not sleep much, running the numbers on my dwindling rations, checking the beacon signal every hour on the hour, watching the narrow gap in the hatch for any sign of movement. It is near dawn on the 3rd day when the beacon finally gets an answer. The signal is weak, distorted by distance, and the storm still lingering somewhere over the horizon, but it is unmistakably a response, a voice cutting through the static, calm and professional, asking for my position and status. I nearly dropped the receiver in my hurry to answer. The voice belongs to a rescue pilot named Owen Brackett, flying a supply route through the outer Varan lanes, who picked up my beacon almost by accident on a routine sweep. He tells me a ship can reach my coordinates within 6 hours, weather permitting. 6 hours has never sounded so short and so long at the same time. I spend those hours doing what I can to prepare, dragging what supplies I can salvage out into the open, keeping the beacon active, and keeping one eye constantly on the tree line in case our uninvited visitor decides to return for a second attempt. It does not. Whatever warning Ember's cry delivered seems to have been enough. Ember stays close the entire time, never more than a few feet away, occasionally climbing back into my lap to doze in short bursts, her trust in me apparently unshaken by everything we have just survived together. If anything, it seems stronger, like the danger cemented something between us rather than damaging it. When the rescue ship finally descends through the clouds, its landing thrusters kicking up a wide circle of dust and loose soil, Ember presses herself flat against my chest and lets out a low, warning growl, small and fierce, and utterly serious. I have to laugh despite everything, rubbing a hand gently along her back until the growling fades into a low, watchful hum. Owen Brackett steps down from the ship's ramp, takes one look at the baby dragon glaring at him from my arms, and simply raises both hands slowly, a small, amused smile crossing his face. He does not ask questions yet. He just tells me to get on board before the weather turns again. The walk up that ramp feels longer than it should. Behind us, the crash site grows smaller, the wreck of my pod already half swallowed by drifting dust, the scorched clearing beyond it fading into the gray distance. Ahead of us is a warm cabin, a working medical kit, and the first real meal I have had in 3 days. Once we are airborne, Owen finally asks the obvious question, nodding toward Ember, who has claimed a spot curled against my chest exactly where she started this whole impossible journey. He asks if I plan to hand her over to the nearest research station once we land, the way protocol probably suggests I should. I look down at her, already asleep again, one small claw hooked loosely into the collar of my suit, like she is afraid I might disappear if she lets go completely. I think about the scorched clearing, the empty sky where her mother should have been, the sound she made that saved both our lives without a second of hesitation. I tell Owen that some things do not really ask permission. They just happen, and you build your life around them afterward. He does not argue with me. He just nods, sets a course, and lets the ship carry us both toward whatever comes next. Hours later, strapped into a proper seat with a working heater and a full stomach for the first time in days, I finally let myself relax. Ember stirs beside me, blinking those bright golden eyes open just long enough to make sure I have not gone anywhere, before climbing straight back onto my chest and settling in with a small, satisfied sigh. I do not move her. I do not even try. I just lean my head back, close my eyes, and let her sleep there, exactly where she landed on that very first morning, like she owns the place. Because at this point, I am fairly certain she does.